Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to talk about what 4,000 developers say about IoT. Can you hear me like this?
That's better.
Yeah. So what 4,000 developers say about IoT in 20 minutes. I think you heard heard enough about me. What we do is we analyze developer trends on the largest scale possible. Last year we surveyed about 18,000 developers. We track developer segments, we track revenues, regions, tools, plus IoT, of course, and all the developer segments from the hobbyists and the hackers to the enterprise IT folks. The data I'm going to present comes from two reports. The first one is we published this, a month ago. Data contains data from 4,000 developers, 120 countries, 50 platforms. So it's basically the IoT developer platform landscape. And the other report, which looks at the top-down model of the market, what are the business models and what are the trends by which the Internet of Things market is moving. Now, I'm going to talk about four different trends here and describe data on all of these trends. So what is IoT really about? What is the state of the ecosystem? Should you be investing in consumer and enterprise? And who are the winning platforms? So this is both market models and data in this presentation. So one of my favorite sayings is that IoT is not about I or the T. It's not about the internet or the things. And why is that? It sounds counterintuitive, but it actually should not be. So when you ask people what IoT is, they will often say, well, when you add an app to something else that you have, when you add an app to a thermostat, when you add an app to a sports shoe, or you add connectivity to like a watch or a bracelet and so on, and you have a fitness tracker. This example is Honeywell, who's a thermostat maker, and they built an app for their thermostat. Really simple stuff. But this is still a thermostat. I wouldn't say it's where Internet of Things is going tomorrow. It's where it is today, but tomorrow it's going somewhere very different. If you want to see where IoT is going tomorrow, then look at this device, which in fact is not a thermostat. And why is it not? Because it is a data hub pulling together information from many, many different types of sources, not just the temperature sensor that you have in your phone, in your thermostat, but more importantly, the electricity that other users in the neighborhood are consuming, and the usage of their thermostats compares weather information, compares data from other devices in your home to make a very simple decision, which is, am I going to turn the heating on or off? So an awful amount of data for a very simple decision. Turns out that it actually saves a lot of energy, both in practice and both if you have friends and you speak to them, after they've installed Nest, you actually see a significant energy saving. But what is Nest really? It's not longer a thermostat. It's really a data hub that processes a lot of different types of information in order to create intelligence and action. In fact, you can do lots more smart things by connecting your Nest to lots of other smart devices. And what happens then? So in this case, you see Nest being connected to a washing machine, a car, a door lock, a security camera, a watch, an alarm clock, and all these are examples from Nest's website, developer website. And once you connect Nest to other smart devices, the data from those devices starts to become combined or mashed up, as we say in sort of technology speak, and interesting things happen. So your washing machine now understands when you're away from home and runs the clothes through another cycle so that they don't get soaked. Or you get an alarm clock when, for example, any of your other smart home things needs to tell you something, or you get, what's another good example? I think connects with light bulbs of some sort. So when there's something wrong with your energy consumption, like a peak or some irregularity of some sort, it starts flashing, and you know the light starts flashing, and you know something's wrong with your heating. And all sorts of intelligent scenarios, and these are not about any of the individual devices. That intelligence comes together when the devices and their data come together. So IoT, in this case, is not about the device itself, but it's about the data applications. In all of these verticals, home, car, security, energy, and health. And it's in none of these verticals by itself, but in all of them. And so you ask, what is the vertical for, or the industry for smart thermostats? Well, verticals are now disappearing. You can describe any of these use cases in many different verticals. They actually span many different verticals. If you look at 4 different verticals: smart city, wearable, smart home, and connected car, you will see that there's sensors, there's data, and there's applications. So like in the case of Nest, it can tell you when to turn the heating on or off. In the case of road sensors, it can tell you where to find the next parking slot. But if you want to build a parking application, there's many different sensors you can use. Instead of parking sensors, you can use road or street cameras, you can use cell phone signals. You can use data from even GPS applications like Waze, who's giving their data to city councils, and I'll talk about that. But what's unique is not the sensor itself. The sensor is replaceable. The hardware is replaceable. What's unique is the application that you build with it. Right? So what are developers doing? You would think most of them are building Apple or Android smartwatch apps. You would think many of them are building like the next Fitbit or the next Jawbone. But actually, there are more developers building data applications than any of the other 2 cases. And this comes from our survey for 4,000 developers. So already, the momentum is in building data applications, and this is where the value and this is where the future is. Now, let's look at what developers are exactly doing in IoT. Already more than half of mobile developers are engaged in either an experimental or a commercial IoT project. So more than half, and this is early 2015, it's actually end of 2014 when we run the survey. So it's a very, very large share of developers who are active in IoT. This is not future potential, this is right now. Most of them do not come from the embedded space. They have very little experience in IoT, and they're mostly hobbyists or doing it as a side project. So they're the guys who and the girls who will take the risk and not do it for the money, but for the fun and the learning experience. And they will discover the use cases today. We consider some of them crazy and some of them hugely successful, but we don't know how to tell which from which. So they're the people that are actually going to, take the risk and figure out which use cases are the killer use cases. And in fact, the whole IoT ecosystem today very much resembles the Windows Phone ecosystem. Now, this is the segment mix. We have a fairly sophisticated methodology for understanding developer segments. In other words, the types of developers that are active in any ecosystem. And if you look at the makeup of IoT developers, they're very much like the makeup of Windows Phone today. Windows Phone today is in its majority hobbies and explorers, not the supercells, not the guys who are making the highly profitable applications. And Android is, has many more what we call hunters and guns for hire. And of course, mobile web is the most mature ecosystem with the most balanced set of segments. So IoT is in relatively very early stages still. Now, how about consumer versus enterprise? So if you are a developer, or if you are a software vendor or a hardware vendor, and you're saying, should I actually invest in creating products for enterprises or consumers? Or if you are an enterprise and you're saying, where should I go and look for my solution? Should I go to Accenture? Should I go to IBM? Or should I go to Slush? Right? Consumer, hobbyist type technology, or enterprise type technology. Now, what history shows is this. This is a timeline, number of units shipped. This is how the world looked in 2007. Windows Mobile and BlackBerry were growing. Apple was still in the very, very early stages. Ballmer was famous for saying, well, good luck to Apple, because it's not good enough for business users and it's too expensive. But turns out that it wasn't business users that bought devices. It was BYOD. It was the people working for the enterprises that forced the CIO to accept those devices in the organization because they were everywhere. So it was consumers who adopted smartphones, and those who had an enterprise-first approach lost. In other words, the technologies that became adopted by enterprises were first incubated in consumer land and in hobbyist land. Same thing now is happening with IoT. In smart cities, consumer technology is invading city councils. So if anyone's here working for a large consultancy, you must have heard many projects pitched to city councils. It's very, very common now. Every major consultancy is pitching smart city projects to city councils. And here comes Waze, and Waze is a GPS application. It's very popular in the US, in Israel, and other parts of the world. And basically, what it does is allow you to figure out where to go, from A to B without bumping into the traffic. So Waze goes to the city councils, and this happened in Rio a few years back when the Pope was visiting, and said, if you want to really figure out where, the traffic is building up and where you need to actually manage it because you're having somebody important in the city, well, we can give you a really cost-effective solution. And, in fact, they don't charge anything. And they did this with Rio. They gave their traffic data for free in return for a point of interest locations and other city mapping data from the city councils. So it's a data exchange. And now they have this program they call Connected Citizen Program with over 20 cities where the city councils are actually sourcing data from a consumer incubated technology and winning over bids from the likes of IBM and HP and Accenture and so on. Another case is drones. Drones started, as we all know, from military technology that was quite hotly debated. But then today's drone technology doesn't really come from military. It comes from those startups which eventually became large companies producing drone technology, like DJI, which is a Chinese company, which is the most successful drone manufacturer today. They make some really, really sophisticated drones. And this all started from catering to the hobbies and the enthusiasts initially, and now they're being bought by real estate agents and photographers, and Amazon wants to use drones for delivering goods and many other use cases. So again, incubated technology in consumer land, now adopted by enterprise. So if you want to figure out what technology is going to be used in enterprise in 3 and 4 years, it's not going to be the technology today incubated by the large enterprise firms. It will be technology incubated in Slush, in startups, in consumer products, in Kickstarter. That's where to look. So IoT is 2008 in smartphone year. So this is exactly what you're going to see. The products that will take over homes and enterprises and so on will come from B2C products, not enterprise products. And already we see developers favoring the vertical smart home and wearables, which are consumer verticals and not enterprise verticals. Finally, winners and losers in IoT. So who are the winning platforms? We surveyed in our research over 50 different platforms, actually over 100, but we only listed about 15 in the report. This is a snapshot of some. This breaks down, and you cannot take any pictures of this whatsoever. I'm joking. Now people with cameras.
Must be valuable.
So what you have is in the rows you have the verticals, and in the columns you have the business model. So this breaks down a bunch of platforms by business model and by vertical. Some of the early insights is that there are platforms by ecosystem expanders. These are those who have an ecosystem, usually in mobile, and are expanding into IoT. They do not plan to make money from the platform. Same for product platformizers. They have a product such as SmartThings, and they're using a platform to attract developers to write apps for that product. Again, they don't plan on monetizing the IoT platforms. Contrary to platform as a service and open source platforms, they're actually planning to make money from the developer platforms. And of course, you know who is going to be disadvantaged. It's those who are trying to make money from IoT platforms because everybody else is going to give them away for free. Case in point, all the mobile platforms. I think Symbian learned that lesson too long ago now. Now, what's the pattern here? If you look at which are the most popular platforms, and you break them down by vertical, what do you see? Few familiar logos. Can you see a pattern? So, all of these in that big shape are ecosystem expanders. In other words, they are companies who have already a mobile ecosystem and are expanding into IoT. And the guys who are on the left are trade boosters, what we call trade boosters. In other words, they're e-commerce companies who are into expanding into IoT. What does e-commerce have to do? What on earth does e-commerce have to do with IoT? Think about it as this, that every connected object, whether it's this table, or it's your sports shoe, or it's your fridge, or it's your car, or it's your washing machine, is going to become a point of sale for e-commerce services. So your car manufacturer is going to say, 3 years from now on, I will recommend you what oil to change, or where to buy the oil for your engine, or where to buy your water for your car, and where to buy your gas, of course. So they're going to be making money by brokering the transaction with the oil maker and the seller and so on. The same thing with your washing machine. Amazon now has something called Dash, that is a button, works with some washing machine manufacturers. Basically, you press the button, or it works automatically. When the washing machine knows that it's out of detergent, it goes and orders a detergent automatically. Same thing applies to anything that you can connect. There are stuff that you want to associate with that purchase. And so e-commerce companies have much to gain from IoT by allowing you to buy stuff automatically from that connected device.
Andreas, 2 minutes.
Already you see much interest in connected cars, and you see interest. Out of that interest, that's the zoom in on the right hand side. That interest is for the established platforms, Android Auto and CarPlay from Apple, and they are much bigger in terms of developer interest than MirrorLink, which is a standard. I'll tell you about standards in one slide. This is more of a breakdown of the different mindshare, intentshare, the developer interest in any of these platforms, and of course you see the usual names again. But the most interesting thing here is that platforms are the new standard. And this is a picture of from a vendor stand at MWC in Barcelona, where these guys took IFT. IFT stands for if this then that. If you don't know what IFT is, go and check it out. You have to, by the way. And IFT is one of the emerging standards. Now, these guys did not really ask IFT for permission. They did not consider IFT a standard. But by connecting IFT to any other IoT device, it suddenly becomes very powerful. I don't have the time to run through the whys, but already we see the early standards emerge as platforms developed in the open and for developers, not platforms, not standards developed behind closed doors. If you want to see more about these market trends and this IoT developer data, you can go to visionmobile.com/reports. I have some of the trends reports with me if anyone wants them. And this is my email. And again, we do IoT and apps research on the largest scale possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas.
My name is Fredrik Thorén. I'm having the gamification track later on. Having a speech there, but I want to ask you about I guess what is in the topic now, the Tesla with the Powerwall. So, do you think that is something that also is going to boost its sales, help it connect with other things? Is that an IoT thing, or it's just a gimmick? Or not a gimmick, but no, the battery. Let's say.
Yeah, here you go. There's two projections on Tesla and where it's going. The one that it takes an Apple model, which is a hardware profits model. So the profits come out of the car or out of the battery pack or the Powerwall. This is where they make their money today. The other theory says that this is where they start, but their future model is actually to make money from managing traffic, or managing transportation, or managing energy, which in fact are bigger markets. So, it's anyone's guess, but it's two very different business models. So they will be both. Google is certainly not going to be, in the car business, but they will certainly be in the traffic management business because they collect user data like this and they are able to relay that to targeting those users. So you can choose your school of thought, in short.
Great. Thank you, Andreas. Thank you again.